What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad Podcast. Today, I am really looking forward to a good conversation with Jason Jannati. Seems we just met, but it seems we already have a decent amount in common between the bikes he's got hanging up in the background, 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, just like me. Adventurous. We've got some definitely friends in common, so I'm looking forward to getting to know you a little bit. So, Jason, if you can, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us about your family and tell us about your business.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. Glad to be here. Glad we got connected. Family wife is Carly. We've been together, just celebrated 12 years married, 18 together.
Nice.
And got George, Lola, and Frank, our little ones that can make us complete. So loving the chaos, loving the action we get here. And in terms of the business front, I do 2 things. I implement EOS with businesses I love spending time with, and I invest in companies I believe in. So
nice.
Try to keep it simple and have a lot of fun.
Welcome to the BizDad Podcast, where we dive into the melding of fathership and entrepreneurship with your host, the original BizDad himself, Adam Labar. Adam is a Christian, a former Air Force officer, a dad to 3 amazing kids, a coach, a real estate investor, and a business owner. On this podcast, he'll explore the unique journeys of amazing dads who are striving for greatness in both business and family. So whether you're a dad who is an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply a man striving to be a better dad, get ready as the BizDad brings you conversations to inspire, challenge, and equip you to be a better dad and entrepreneur. And now, here's Adam.
The EOS side of the house, it's amazing how many people, how huge EOS has gotten, especially when like every time I interview somebody and they're like, oh yeah, we use EOS, or oh, I'm an EOS implementer. And it's everywhere. I love it. I also, and the little EOS binder back here, I'm an EOS guy for sure. So
love it. I think over 30,000 companies are using it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Not surprised by it at all. So, and that's just the ones that are officially using it, let alone all of the unofficial ones, So there's loads of them. So as I usually do, I'd love to kind of learn a little bit about how you got to where you are, kind of a little bit of background about who you are, kind of what it was like for you growing up. I know you mentioned before we even started recording, I talked about my long road trip, family road trips down to Florida and back, and you're up in the Maryland area. So that's a long hoof. So let's rewind a little bit, understand a little bit about who Jason is, where you came from, especially like to focus on the father side of the house. Who was your dad and what did that, what was he to you?
Yeah, so it's fun. I mean, you think about it, like not often do we get to talk about this. So it was kind of interesting getting ready for this and just kind of exploring. So I grew up in Columbia, Maryland, went to Oakland Mills High School, which was, kind of a great place, played soccer. I think learned a lot from being on the team. We pretty much, we played in 3 state championships and won 2. So I learned a lot about character, team building, leadership. And so I was really fortunate to go through that program with the coach there. So my father actually immigrated from Iran right before the Shah fell. I don't know the exact year. I could figure that out. But yeah, right before Shah fell. And my mom was raised Jewish in Baltimore. So it was kind of like this odd couple. My father was actually a custodian at the dance studio where my mom was dancing. They met, they got together, and kind of fast forward, and they had me. So he was mechanical engineering and she's a social worker. So it was like this kind of like 2 ends of the spectrum coming together. Culturally, professionally, it was just kind of wild. And Columbia just kind of, I always feel lucky to have been born here in Columbia. It feels like the right fitting of just, it was a place meant for people who wanted to come from different backgrounds to come and kind of all feel together. So I'm really grateful to have grown up in Columbia. We're raising our kids here. So feel really lucky.
That's awesome. Hey, everybody, wanted to step in to discuss something. If you're anything like me, you've ran into some time in your business where you feel a little overwhelmed with some of the mundane tasks that eat up your valuable time. You're working more in the business than you are on the business, right? If that's you and you're hearing this and you're saying, boy, it is time to reclaim some of my schedule back, to focus on what truly matters. You want to get time back with elite remote talent with 0 time zone hassle. Check out one of my partners that I just recently partnered up with, WiseVAs.com/Adam is where you go to check these folks out. Delegate $10 an hour tasks to focus more on the $1,000 an hour tasks, the things that are really transforming your business. Get rid of some of those transactional things and do some more of the transformational inside of your business. So again, schedule your free strategy call at WiseVAs. wise.com/Adam, wise, WISEVAS.com/Adam. Again, let's get rid of some of those transactional tasks and move them into transformational tasks. It's been a phenomenal team to work with. I really look forward to sharing them with you. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'll be happy to discuss with you what's going on as well. But again, wisevas.com/Adam. Thank you very much. And now back to the episode. Boy, I would imagine that since your dad immigrated before the Shaw fell, right? It was a completely different country than it is now. I would imagine there's a lot of stories and feelings. Is your dad still around?
Yes, yeah, he is. He lives out of the country now. He's in outside. He spends time between Colombia, South America, and southern coast of Spain.
Okay, very cool. So I would imagine growing up, you heard a lot of stories, or maybe he just didn't say anything about it. But after the Shaw fell, I would imagine his emotions went kind of crazy and all the stuff that was going on to his home country. So, what was that like for you kind of hearing, especially if you look at the lens from today, where there's just this huge, like Iran and Jew, like that's not like, that's a big problem, right? Back then, not as much, right? So kind of what was that like for you culturally growing up?
What was interesting, I was telling a friend of mine this, they were listening to like classic rock music. And I remember I was like, they're like, you don't know this song? I was like, I don't know that song. Like, I don't know any of that. Like, I almost feel like I was almost not first generation, but like I didn't really have much of a feel for just traditional American culture growing up. Yeah. And I didn't realize that until I started bumping into other friends with their parents had all the same music they liked. So I always felt a little, I guess, out of place. Because I didn't really have a group to fit into or just a group that I had a lot in common with. But I think, what I heard from my dad was, he moved to this country because it was a place where you could make it if you put the work in. You had the chance if you were willing to do what it took. And so I think I always, whether that was entrepreneurial spirit or just survival spirit, I think I always got that from him. And I'm eternally grateful for him making that sacrifice. I always feel like he kind of like used his branch of the family tree to kind of get us over here, and be born and raised here. But it was always this kind of format of just like, hey, if you want something, go figure out how to accomplish it. There was never like this excuse mentality or like this kind of dependency mentality. It's like, if you want to you got to fix your car, you fix your own car. You want to build something, you build it. So I think I gained two things that come to mind. Was one, a sense of kind of a little bit of a sense of adventure, a sense of being able to go after stuff that you can't see. And then also just a sense of independence, of trust in, myself to figure things out. So really, really grateful for that.
That's awesome. And how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I will be turning 39 next week. So
very good. Well, happy birthday. Yeah.
Thank
all right.
you.
So we're right around the same age, but I'm a little bit older than you. But I would imagine it's interesting. What did your dad talk about, like in detail? His decision, obviously, a lot of people want to come here. Immigrants coming over here. There was a huge push, especially in the Reagan era, leaving Iran after the Shah fell, right? Yeah. And just like, hey, we got to get the heck out of here. But he took off before the Shah fell. So was he like living in some sort of a way that he was just like I don't want to be here. Like this is just not like. Did he see the writing on the wall, I guess, or was it something different?
Yeah, I think that's kind of how he described to me. I think he also, spiritually, I think, and maybe kind of mentality-wise, I think he really aligned more with kind of this free spirit of, just, hey, what he always says, like, respect nature, be a great person, do the right thing, especially when no one's looking, and just treat people well. So I think he kind of just culturally didn't feel like he fit where he was living. And I think he just saw America as that place where you could become and create whatever you dreamed of. Yeah. Which he did. I mean, he came now. Unfortunately, my parents split up when I was about 15. So that was kind of a different chapter, a different kind of experience for me, kind of in that phase. But I think, he showed me what it meant to do whatever it took to take care of your family. Was one of the biggest lessons I got.
What was it like for your mom, right? So she was a Jewish person and getting married to an Iranian. Did you find any issues in there as you were growing up in the culture clash, or like the family issues, in-laws, all that?
I didn't notice it until I was with a friend's family, and both the grandparents were there. And like, I noticed how like close they felt. Like they were all kind of like hanging out. It was like a big family fun thing. And when my family got together, it always felt more like a meeting. You know, it was like they weren't like enjoying their time together. They were just together. So I think there was a little bit of distance between the different kind of families. My father's family was kind of still in Iran, so his mother and father didn't come over. But so I think he had some challenges. You know, just kind of, you know, once you get here and you kind of get the feet planted, that's kind of, you know, phase one. But then phase two is actually operating and finding a sense of place and a sense of sanity. And I think that, in all open and honesty, I think that may have been a challenge for him. And I think that may be why he felt he needed to kind of go into other places and other spaces in his life.
Yeah. I think that's, I mean, there's a lot to that in, you know, I talk to a lot of, I'm a Christian guy. I do, you know, financial coaching and different things for my church, for individuals in the church. And that's one of the things, like your religion and how you work your money, the two of those things, like you really have to be in line with, because they're massive. I mean, it all comes down to communication. Are you guys able to communicate freely and communicate openly with each other? And if you guys are, if a couple is ignoring certain things and it becomes a problem later, eventually it's going to become a problem. Sure. So, you know, it's, you know, it's one of the reasons I was curious, just kind of, you know, they split up when you were 15 and they're two very, very different cultures, and how that kind of works. So, that's interesting.
The other thing that comes to mind was I just remember he worked a lot, you know, and it was one of those things where, like, I remember he was gone before I woke up. He was getting back kind of close to bedtime. And you know, I think at times it didn't really hit me, but I think that was one of the things that motivated me, was to make sure that, you know, I could, you know, kind of like stand on the shoulders he gave me, and to put in place more time, more space for the family to kind of not just feel the resources, but just my presence. And so that's always been like really, you know, you kind of, I think you mentioned earlier before, you kind of learn what to do and what not to do. It really motivated me to make sure I was there, you know, and present with the family, not just, you know, kind of an asset to the family, I guess.
What about your mom, right? As a social worker, she's dealing with a lot of, like, I don't know what kind of social worker she is, but there's so much involved with dealing with that and all the negativity you have to see, and that, like, that's a lot of baggage to bring home every day and see your family. And so what was that like for you?
You know, it was, my mom was always, and still is, always such a warm, safe place. You know, it was like no matter how hard or how tough, it always felt like she was able to kind of stay calm and keep, you know, keep you sane, I guess, you know. I remember one time I got suspended from middle school. I don't know what I did, knucklehead type stuff. And, you know, I thought I was just going to sit home and like watch TV all day. She's like, no, you're not, like, you're coming with me to work. I'm like, okay, like, what do you even do? Like, you know, I'm a kid. I don't know. So she actually worked in, you know, I think it was the east side of Baltimore. It was a NA and AA recovery place. So I literally was in, I don't know if this was street legal. It probably was not, but I was like sitting in the corner of like an NA meeting with these people from inner city Baltimore, just like pouring their hearts out. I just remember I wasn't like a scared straight thing, but it was like I think that's when I first felt like empathy. Like it was the first time I saw somebody who was grown. I was a little kid, but I saw these people like at rock bottom, just like begging for help, begging to be a better version of themselves. And I just remember seeing my mom in that room, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like you're managing this room with this severity, and I'm giving you, like, you know, so it grew me up, and it gave me a perspective of how tough life can be for people. And so I think my mom was always that kind of, it was right side, left side. Like, I guess my dad was left side engineering, right? And I don't know if I have that right, but my mom was always that, like, how do you feel? You know, and I remember she always told me, like, I never got good grades, but she said, Jason, you're a people person. You know, like you do well with people and energy and all that stuff. And I was like, well, okay, that's just maybe you trying to make me feel better for not, you know, understanding how to do chemistry. But I think she always kind of saw the good in me and the good in people and really helped bring it out.
I think that's solid as what we should do. I think as parents anyways is, you know, that's one of the reasons I started homeschooling is I kind of look at it and go, okay, what are the strengths of my kids? You know, a school always, you know, I shouldn't say always, but oftentimes a school is like hammering you for the things you're missing and trying to make them stronger. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, if math isn't your thing, then math isn't your thing. That's okay. We'll get you to a point where you have a sustainability factor in math, and that's about it. But let's focus on what your strengths are and sharpen those skills. Like, I mean, I can hire somebody out in a business to do my math stuff if I'm not good at math, but I can't but if I'm really good at people, I should really be engaged in strengthening that. So as you were kind of growing up and seeing that and feeling that from your mom, but also understanding your dad's side of the house, especially I wouldn't mind going up to almost at the divorce side, right? Because there's a huge separation in your brain, I'm sure, once the household splits. Yeah. Like, how did you kind of start to tread your own path with those two people as your role models?
Yeah, that was a tough time. I think more subliminally than consciously. I think at the age, I think it was maybe 15, mid high school, right? And at first I was like, this is awesome. Like, I have so much freedom. My dad's not here. He's really was the one that kind of kept things in line. So like, he's not here. I can kind of roam, do whatever I want. My mom, I'm kind of, as long as I'm respectful, like, she's really not too much in my business. So at first I loved it. At first I was like, awesome. I thought, I kind of grew up a little bit faster than I think maybe I could have or should have. But I think I was really lucky because I bring up the Oakland Mills soccer program. We had a coach, his name was Don Shea. A lot of people locally will know him. He was like a father figure to a lot of us. I will say, if you've ever seen the movie Varsity Blues, he was like that coach, in a lot of ways, but he was like a constant. He challenged us to be our own leaders of our own lives, and character and pride and respect. And so I think with that, and with another mentor I had bumped into, I think we may both know Pat Hyben, who one of the I really just that was my time. I started getting into business. I started reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read Richest Man in Babylon. I just wanted to start surrounding myself with business, because I had this belief, like, I'm not really strong in school, but if I can learn how money works and how business works, I got a chance. So I think in one side, I was doing a lot of dumb knucklehead stuff where I was really lucky not to get in too much trouble. Whereas, I think all of us, I did a lot of workforce development in the solar field of returning citizens. And, a lot of times there's all this judgment. I said, look, the only difference between you and me is you got caught, and so I always kind of had that perspective. But yeah, it was tough. I think I felt an allegiance to my mom when all that happened. I think I just kind of naturally felt like, I have a responsibility to make sure I'm here for her, kind of emotionally, physically, just kind of present, so she's not feeling too alone. Because it was tough. I mean, one of the things you don't think about is, like, if I was going to go out with my friends on a Friday night, it's like, I just think, oh man, I have a younger brother. So he was around, but was like, okay, well, I don't really want my mom to just be home alone. And she always felt sad. I just kind of felt this responsibility of being there. So I think it matured me sooner than maybe I would have if they stayed together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it kind of forced you to find a different mentor that you can have around you on a day-to-day basis, though. So, it made me kind of wonder, as you were saying that, one thing that we've talked about in GoBundance and the FanBundance side of GoBundance was intentionally getting people around your kids that help shape and mold them, because they're going to hear it differently than coming from dad, right?
Sure.
So dad may have been able to tell you the same things that Pat and was it Don Shea, you said?
Yeah.
So your dad may have been able to say the same things, but you're not going to hear them the same. It's not going to hit your eardrums the same way. Right. So, is there anything that you're doing now or thinking about? Because obviously your oldest is 10, so it's maybe a slightly different stage at the moment. But to intentionally place somebody like a Pat Hyben or like a Don Shea in your kid's life to help them receive some of that same stuff that you received in a different way. Yeah,
and one of the things that that it's funny I was actually really lucky. It's maybe a longer story, but I was successfully able to stalk / build a relationship and mentorship with Howard Behar, who was the the president of Starbucks from 28 stores to, he did a podcast with them. Anyways, long story, but he said to me, the question was, hey, if somebody wanted you to be their mentor, what advice would you give them? And he said, well, what's your mission? What's your vision? What's your values? If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And so I really did a lot of deep work about 3 years ago with just true, really tactical core values. And so, ours are brave, kind, curious, helpful with extreme ownership. And so have really focused to answer your question, any friends of our family, anybody that's is around us, maybe not we're not there with a pen and paper, but we're kind of feeling hey, is this person, blaming other people for stuff? And if they are, to your point, we're working really hard to guard our kids against, I'd say toxic mindsets.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think, fortunately through Pat and GoBundance and everybody, like, a lot of my mentors are the people I love my kids spending time with. Like we have Gary Jonas, I don't know if you know him from Philly. He's Uncle Gary, Mark Schwager, Uncle Mark, right? Like they're nice. Like close family. And so, so we're as intentional as we can be with that. I think, the other thing I realized was that when my father moved away, I realized that like I didn't really have a dominating influence in my life. I think Napoleon Hill talks about like the dominating influence. So like I was kind of at the whim of whoever had a assuredness about themselves. And so I really always felt a little bit uncertain about who I am, what I stood for, because I just didn't have a foundation. So I really thought it was important for Carly and I to be that foundation for the kids so that, they and other kids. I mean, I coached Georgie's soccer team, and, if it's hot or something, we always keep practice on. They're like, well, why don't you ever cancel? It's like, well, we have so many other neighborhood kids who count. They're not on the team, but they count on us having that practice. And a friend of mine, he was like a father to me growing up, kind of in that window of like high school, when stuff happened to him. He was like, rich dad, poor dad. He was kind of like the rich dad. He had a construction company. He coached his son's soccer team. And so I was really lucky to kind of like just learn and see kind of how he operated as a patriarch and a father. Yeah,
that's awesome. I think that we need to purposely put those types of examples and let our kids see that type of stuff, because again, they're going to see it very differently coming seeing it somebody else.
Yeah, I heard that. I was just going to say, I heard a quote on that note. I heard a quote that said, like, sometimes hearing it from somebody else is more powerful because the kid knows they don't have to love them.
Yeah.
Like, as your dad, I got to love you. But when somebody else is pouring into you, they don't have to do that. So it's impactful.
Yeah, for sure. I like that.
Yeah.
Now, let's fast forward a little bit. How did you kind of get into, I mean, it sounds like with the type of mentors you had, so you got into entrepreneurship. Like, let's go to after high school, what that looked like for you.
Yeah. So, high school, graduate, immediately study to get my real estate license. I wanted to kind of just start. I wanted to be in control of my time and control my income. That was like my two things, kind of rich dad, poor dad thing. I got my license, all my friends were at the pool, hanging, partying. I'm just like studying. I'm not a good student. So I'm like studying hard for this real estate license. I'm like struggling. And so I ended up getting my license. And I just started getting my butt kicked. I literally just cold calling, just doing anything I can, asking friends, family, hey, if your parents are selling, just totally like just 101 sales stuff. I'm in a Subway sandwich shop. This is kind of like a little bit of an infamous story with Pat. So I'm in a Subway sandwich. I'm with my buddies. I have my license about a year in, and all of a sudden I'm like, that's Pat Hyben. Like, he has these goofy commercials that are going on. So everybody, he's a big time deal in the real estate space back in the day. And so my friends are like, dude, like, we don't know what you're talking about. Like, we don't know who's Pat Hyben. I'm like, no, that's Pat Hyben. He was like seeing LeBron James or seeing like, a star. And so I'm like, Pat, I yell his name, like, Pat, and I look away. And then all of a sudden I'm turning, he's like, what's up, dude? Like, oh man, like I didn't have a plan. So I just, like, my gut is like, I just walk up to him like, hey, like, I don't want to, I've just begged him for an internship. I'm like, I don't need to make any money. I don't want anything. I just want to learn. Can I come be around you in your office? And he kind of like sizes me up. He looks me up and down. He's like, all right, well, follow up with my office manager and let's see what happens. So long story short, I end up getting the internship. I moved my license over. I'm working with Pat for about 2 years. I'm doing, real estate as a buyer's agent under him. Mm-hmm. One thing I learned from Pat was there's a lot of guys, I'm sure this is kind of the essence of your podcast here, is like there's a lot of guys who you'll see and women who are successful in business, but their health is out of whack or their family's out of whack. I saw a guy who was intentional about all the areas of his life. And I'd never really seen that before. I just seen business, or fitness. I hadn't seen somebody really working to caress everything into shape. And so he taught me about goal setting. He taught me about accountability. He taught me about vulnerability. And so we would just be like, hey, you want to go on a hike? I'm like, yes, like anything I can do. So he'd like, bring your goals. I'm like, what? He's like, bring your goals. I'm like, oh.
Like my soccer goal? Like, my soccer goal? Like,
yeah. So he like gave me a jerk. I remember one thing he did. This was a shift for me, and it's a lesson I've carried forward. It's like, I think a lot of times when people find mentors, they want the mentor, but they almost want the mentor to do it for them. Mm-hmm. And what I found was like when a mentor gives me an opportunity to show up big time. And so I remember he gave me this Tony Robbins like 45-day cassette tape thing. Like, so we're getting we can still say we're a little bit older. So I remember he gave it to me. He's like, all right, why don't you try this and I'll see what it does. I talked to him afterwards, and I think he really didn't even think I was going to. I think he was worried about getting the tapes back.
Yeah.
Like, and I remember every day I did it. I said, I'm going to do one thing a day. I followed it. I sent him. I gave him all my notes. And he looked at me. He's like, huh. And I think that earned the ability to spend more time, more investment into me and vice versa. So, but I'll say I got to the point where I kind of felt like I wanted to do something different than just real estate sales. It was tough, man, because I wanted to start a company. I really had a thought, a belief in, like, if we can help make things more efficient, more sustainable, more, save people money, that's a business that would be worth building. And so I remember I walked into Pat's office. I was so nervous because I felt so bad. I felt like it was like I didn't know how to tell him that I wanted to move on and do something. And he was like, dude, he's like, go for it. I was like, I've been building this thing up for like 3 days, like sweating, and you're like super cool. Like, so that was another lesson of just like,
in a way, he was training you to do that, right? He was training you to have your own goals, to have your own future. And that's, I think it's wise for us to even think about as parents is we're training our kids to be independent kids who are able to become healthy and wealthy themselves, not just follow in our footsteps. So, that's how we need to be, and make sure. And then when we're mentoring somebody, great. Like sometimes firing somebody's the best way. Sometimes them quitting is the best thing for them. So let it happen, but go for it. That's how they can go and succeed better.
Yeah. I remember so I have a small mastermind group with we guys hold each other accountable, health, wealth, relationships. And we were doing like a get together. And we were we're doing like kind of the wealth pillar. We're focused on net worth, and the question that came up was like, hey, are you more concerned with cash flow or are you more concerned with net worth? And it was an interesting debate because there's not a right or wrong. And one of the responses from a great friend, Gary Jonas, he's a Philly guy, and he said, my job's not to leave my kids a whole bunch of money. My job is to get them prepared to be successful on their own right. So I'm not worried about what I leave them. I'm worried about who I leave them. And it's always stuck with me.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. So kind of ended the chapter with Pat Hyben, started a company called Renew It. So it's like Renew It, but Renew It. We were doing, this is with Josh.
And that was with Josh. Yeah.
Energy audits on homes. So literally me, Josh, and our other partner, Matei, we had known each other a little bit, but so we just kind of got together aligned and we said we got 3 0% credit cards. We just bought all the equipment, blower door fan to measure the pressure of the house, infrared camera, and we just started. I got certified and just started begging friends and family, like, hey, can we do it on your house? If you like it, refer us. Like, just again, like I was using my sales experience from real estate. So we ended up, I always say I'm the last person convinced you can grow a business too fast. We ended up building the business over 9 years. In the last 3 years, we ended up getting some contract. We went from like 6 employees to 50 employees, $250,000 revenue to $5 million revenue in like 12 months.
Wow.
And, I was a sales guy, right? So I thought everything I did was right. I was like, oh man, we do this, boom, we're going. Everything. I wouldn't say I was cocky, but I was just like ignorant.
So this is probably time-wise, this somewhere around 2007, 2008?
Yep, started 2008, and then we really ended up getting these contracts with utilities to do multifamily work in 2012. Okay. So we're kind of growing a little bit, and then we just went from like 0 to 100. And, I kind of look at backwards. It was kind of like I was like the guy at the merchant who loses money on every deal, but I said, don't worry, I'll make it up in volume. It's like the math just doesn't come together. But we had a big project go against us. This was December 20th, it was like 3 weeks after my daughter Lola was born. Big contract on a military base. We messed up, so we didn't get reimbursed for like $600,000 worth of stuff, time and materials. And we're looking through everything and realize we're just looking each other in the eyes. I remember it was like right before Christmas Eve, and we're looking at each other, me, Josh, and our partner. We're like, we don't have a move here. Like, we gotta shut it down. It was like. And I remember driving around Columbia. All I could think about is, I'm worth more dead than alive. We lost everything. Everything we had was in the business. It was one of those swings where it was like, I was sick to my stomach. Yeah. And my wife, Carly, who's from Central Jersey, so she's the toughest one in the family. I'm driving around. I pull up to the driveway. I see Carly just at the front door. I walk up the driveway, and I just tell her everything. I said, look, this is the situation. This is what we got to do. And I'll never forget, there was like a moment, And she just put her hand on my shoulder and she's like, I trust you. And when she said that, like this wave of relief, like I was like, if everything else felt solvable at that moment. And so it was just time to get to work. So pretty much I just called every single person in my phone book. I said, if there's anywhere I can add value, I'm available, anywhere I can, And so I got 2 calls really that kind of were I think kind of meaningful. One was my friend's father who ran the construction company. He's like, Jay, you can dig holes and haul trash. I said, if I'm going to dig holes, I'm going to be the best hole digger you've ever seen. If I'm hauling trash, you're never going to see a job site this clean. Like I became obsessive of anything I could control. If I'm digging, I had to. It was like, and honestly, that's where I rebuilt my pride, was doing the little things I committed to. The second call I got was from a previous client. And he was like, Jason, I've always appreciated how you handled things. I'm actually looking to acquire businesses. So can you help me find them? Can you help me underwrite them? If you do, I'll give you equity in the deals. Nice. Of course, so I'm like, it's like this kind of low and this high of just like, but it brought me back to earth. And speaking of as kind of the father moment, one of the things I remember, so George was younger at the time. We had this truck that I was hauling trash in called Big Red. It was the ugliest pickup truck you've ever seen. Like you needed a tetanus shot just to like get into it. So driving it around, and I remember I pulled up and George runs out the front door and he's like, hey, Dad, that's cool, big truck. Can I come? I'm like, sorry, buddy, you can't come, but like I'll FaceTime you at lunch. Yeah. So I remember I had the truck all loaded up with trash. It was lunchtime. I did a FaceTime with George and we were talking. Everything was cute. Nothing really, kind of miraculous about that. But something happened where you end the call and you can just see yourself in the background. Mm-hmm. And I remember, this is even tough to just revisit, but I remember looking at the screen of me in the truck with all the trash behind me. And I just broke down. Like I just started like weeping of like just feeling like I had failed my family. I had failed everybody of like, how could I like put us in this situation? And I always remember that because I had shared that with Pat and he said, look, dude, you gotta like, you're crazy. Like you should be looking at that. Like you should take so much pride in the fact that you're willing to do whatever it took that your family needed. He's like, there's a lot of people who wouldn't have touched an inch of trash because they thought they were too good for it. And I think ever since that moment, it proved to myself that like I would do whatever it takes. And so no matter how tough it got, ups and downs, I always had that bedrock to lean on, I guess, which helped a lot.
Yeah, I was, I wrote a note here to follow up on you called everyone in your phone book. And that was something I was going to mention too, is so many people would be too embarrassed to talk about the fact that what they just did ended up as a quote unquote failure. Yeah. But yet it got you to the point where you're like, hey, like it doesn't matter. I need to put my shoulder down, make something happen. Yeah. Make some phone calls. What was your, I would like to steal part of it and just say part of it, I'm sure, was the supportive wife that put her hand on your shoulder, said, I know you got this, which is unbelievable. It's one of the things I tell people, like besides putting your faith in Christ, having a good marriage, marrying the right person is the number one choice you can make in your entire life. Because if you have a strong woman next to you, and I'm talking to all the men here, obviously, if you have a strong woman next to you that is supportive, that is encouraging, that doesn't, slight you, that doesn't look at you in a cross-eyed way, that doesn't, do all of that nonsense, you can do anything and put yourself through a whole lot of terrible situations. So I want to emphasize that part. But what was it inside of you? What sort of things did you find triggered your brain to say, you know what? It doesn't matter what I'm doing. I'm just making these phone calls. I'm going to call the 1,000 people on my contact list. This is going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess I think, I don't know, they call it rock bottom or desperation makes things pretty clear. So I didn't have any other options, right? I didn't have another move. So I think my only move was to just reach out. I mean, the one thing I had that we didn't lose was I had my reputation. I had a reputation of I do what I say I'm going to do. You can trust me. So I think I kind of had to work off that. And it also taught me how critical that was. Like when everything else is gone, that's the only thing that mattered because that was the only reason people answered my call was they knew who I was. I think, I wish I had like a glamorous thing. It was just like, that's the only move I had. I didn't have any other moves. I didn't have, I wasn't very employable. And so it was just, kind of like survival mode. And then the other thing I noticed was, even when I was hauling trash, I think the fact that I think there's a big difference between being busy and being effective. So don't get me wrong. But I think the fact that I was doing something, I think if I would have just been sitting around kind of like, I would have probably just imploded. Yeah. So I think the fact that I stayed busy and I kind of it kept my mind in the game. I always knew I wasn't going to give up, right? I knew that wasn't, but I needed to kind of shoot the gap, or I needed to cover the gap. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and that's why I think now, like when I work with companies, I said, look, if I can help one person avoid that walk up the driveway, like it's time well spent. It's work well done. And I know, like when people are at the dinner table, I always say, like, how many people eat because of the decisions you guys make? How many people rely on your guys' decisions to feed their families? So I think being at that rock bottom, it gave me the perspective of how just mission critical every decision is from a business owner. It's, there's a quote from Obama, and I remember he said, like, I don't get to deal with any of the easy stuff. Like, if it gets to me, it's hard, it's complicated, it's gray. If it's easy, it gets solved before my desk. Yeah. So that always kind of stuck with me because I know how tough it is to run a business. It's like,
and that's where I think that's a wise move for any business owner to think about. Are you answering easy questions? If you're answering easy questions, then you're not set up well inside your business either, right? You don't have the right people below you if you're answering easy questions and solving easy problems. Yeah, like that's not what your role as the owner and the leader of the company should be doing. No, I heard it. It's like don't be the time teller, be the clock builder. It's like build the clock so people can go tell their own time. But if you need to be there for everybody to know you're the bottleneck. Yeah, for sure. And you don't want to be the bottleneck. That's 100%. No. So, you had your first kid around the time so I'm just curious, what's the birthday of the first kid? December what? So Lola was our middle. Yeah. So George was born in 2014. Lola was 2016. Okay. Yeah. You had one, you said it was December 20th is when you had the big loss on the thing. Yeah. So like 3 weeks before. I have 2 December babies. That's the biggest thing that stuck out in my head. Yeah, she's November 21st. So it was like, literally she's like opening her eyes. I'm like, all right, shell shot. Great. That was great timing. Yeah. That was a rough. I mean, and I think the biggest thing for that was just like recapturing my mind. I had so much shame. I remember when I talked to Howard Behar, the Starbucks guy, like I remember I was like, well, I had this, business and we failed. And he was like, okay, like you wouldn't be the last person. You and every other entrepreneur out there. Yes. And he didn't it was weird because he didn't minimize it, but he lightened it for me. Yeah. Because everything was like, I had no confidence, right? Like, and this is hard to share because it's just, I think it's just tough, but like anything I touched was like, oh, well, if I couldn't do that, why could I do this? And I had to really grow out of that. It probably took me. How did you grow out of that? What did you do? And this is a quote I love from Ed Milet. He said, confidence comes from the little promises we make to ourselves, of keeping the little promises we make to ourselves. And I think it was just steady. Surely, if I said I was going to wake up at 6 and do 10 push-ups, I woke up at 6 and did 10 push-ups. If I said I was going to, put the phone down and just spend that time with George or Lola or Frankie, I started giving myself chances to trust myself again. And it wasn't pretty. It wasn't like when they said, oh, I hate when people are like, oh, fail and fail. It's like, okay, fail and just be ready to feel like you just got punched in the face and dragged through the mud and oh, by the way, nobody's helping you up. It's like it doesn't. It's not like it was like a shame and a lack of confidence. And I think I just had to. It was the first time I had to decide: am I going to be scarcity oriented or abundance oriented? And I'm loving your shirt. Like I love it. It's like you can't be both at the same time. And I think it was just little things. It was just little things like, hey, focus on the gap in the gain. Right? It was like all the stuff I had learned from what happened. Instead of it just being me failing, it was like, well, I learned. Hey, I didn't know our numbers. I knew our revenue because I like to talk trash, but I didn't know, our cost of capital. What's our profit margin? What's our all the stuff? Yeah. I just, it's like, that's a big revenue number. We're great. Yeah. So I try to, it's the same thing in your house. Like, it doesn't matter if you have I try to teach my kids, like, okay, you're like, which person has more money? The guy that makes $1 million a year and spends 1.1, or the guy who makes $100,000 a year and spends 90?
Yeah.
Like the guy who spends 90 is more wealthy, right? Like, you can have the largest revenue number in the world. It doesn't matter if your expenses outweigh it. So,
and it doesn't help. I think also, there was a lot of lessons learned about kind of like, I think ego, right? I think a lot of it comes back to ego and like kind of feeding the ego. We were getting a lot of awards. We were getting a lot of attention. We were young. We were rolling. A lot of different kind of places were pumping us up. And, I was just happy to believe all the hype. It didn't serve us. So I think, now it's kind of like, I think I'm able to focus more on the stuff that really matters, and it saves time, it saves energy, it saves money, it saves risk.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, what is your intent now to kind of share some of these lessons learned with your kids? Like, what sort of things do you want to put in place so that your kids can learn from the mistakes and failures and falters that you had that you grew out of? Yeah,
that was interesting. It was like maybe 2 years ago. So George is 11 now. About 2 years ago, somehow Green Knew It came up. We're talking about, I think we had a cup or a shirt. We still have a couple shirts, and kids wear them as PJs. And I remember George is like, he was kind of putting the dots. He was like, this was your business. He's like, but if the business closed, like, are you a good businessman if the business closed? And I was like, it's a great question.
Yeah.
And it was funny, again, like Carly just kind of like always there as a rock, and I'm not saying, marriage is perfect, there's no issues, but like, she was just like, and I said to George, I'm like, man, like, jeez, like, I was like stumbling because it kind of like triggered me again. It was like, well, oh, like, and then Carly said, you know what, you know why your dad's a great businessman? And I was like, just like, and she's because he did it the right way. We made sure everybody had jobs, everybody had lined up, we took care of the people the way we could. And she said, and even if a business doesn't work out, when you do things the right way, that's how you know they're a great businessman. And I was like, oh, thank you. That feels so nice to hear. But so I think for me, I think the financial literacy is really big. So once a year, Frankie's he's 6, so he kind of just hangs with us. But George and Lola, we read Richest Man in Babylon once a year. Just as a family, we read a couple pages a night. I always have to switch it to, for he is to he or she, like kind of, to make sure Lola's not like, what the hell's going on? But, so I think I'd just like to surround them with that. I think we talk about money. We talk about what things cost. We talk about how to make things work. And so I think we never, like, I growing up, like, we never talked about money. Like, it was like,
same here.
You don't, that's not something appropriate to talk about. And so I think now, for example, George said he wanted to start a business. He's like, I really think I could sell Gatorades and chips at school after school. I'll go buy them, I'll sell them. Then I was like, okay. I was like, let's go. And so anyways, we get to the store and he's getting ready to buy stuff. He's like, wait a second. Like, I don't think I'm allowed to sell it at school. I was like, okay, that's probably good for you to know, like, before you start spending your money. And so, but anyways, he still bought some. Oh, I can sell it at the pool. So all of a sudden, the Gatorades are here, and then all of a sudden, Frankie comes in and grabs one from the stash, and all of a sudden, Carly's like, oh my gosh, I forgot to pack in this. So all of a sudden, he's looking at his thing. He's like, wait a second, like, where's all my stuff? Like, that's a good lesson. You got to take care of the stuff. Like, you can't just buy it, leave it out. So I think I like letting them feel it a little bit. One of the challenges I've seen, with balancing wealth and family is, I think that a lot of times when we've grown up without a lot of the pleasures and a lot of the stuff, we almost want to give it to our kids because we didn't have it. And I find that sometimes that really robs the kids of their ability to build grit, their ability to build resilience towards things that just some kids are like, they don't know what their phone bill costs, they don't know what the insurance costs to drive their car. They just expect, hey, send me gas money. And I think that's one of the things I really appreciated about growing up, call it middle class, was like, I had to earn it. I had to go get a job. It wasn't like a nice thing to do. So I think I want the kids to feel it. So if George wants to get a bike, okay, like, let's talk about that. Like, we already got your bike. So if you want a new bike, how are you going to buy that? We'll help you. But I just want them to always have skin in the game.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think just having the conversations opens up the door to be able to do it, and having to be able to have them think about where the money comes from and what it is, everything, even down to grocery shopping. Like, you guys know, like I talk to my kids, like they play how much is all the groceries? How much are all the groceries in our cart worth?
Oh boy,
and they're usually off by a lot, right? So, I know. Even my 10-year-old, he'll obviously get a little bit closer because he's trying to analyze it a bit more. But, it costs money for you to just to be alive in my house. It costs money, so, and that's okay. I don't mind spending money on you guys. It's the point for you guys to understand that this is why we do business stuff. This is where it's at. This is why we think about it. This is how, and now my kids, I think I've told the story on the podcast before, but we were over at my parents' house. So I think it was sometime last year. And so at the time, he would have been my 5-year-old, now 6-year-old. And I found a picture of my dad. He was a correction officer up in New York. Oh, wow. And so, it was a picture of my dad as a CO up there with his CO buddies. And he was like, this is what you used to do, Peepaw? And he's like, yeah. He says, how much money do you think you earned when you were working that job? Right. Because they're just thinking about these things. Yeah. And so my dad comes up to me. He's like, your son asked me the most question that one could ask, And I'm like, this is just, I'm trying to raise them in a way that's, rather than, to go to your point of, rather than giving them all the things I didn't have materially, giving them the education I didn't have. Right. What sort of nuggets can I pass on to them? Because those are the things that are going to bring them somewhere. Yeah. It's not the, yes, they have nicer bikes than I ever had. Yes, they have nicer things than I ever had. But that's not necessarily the point. The point is, what education can I give them that they don't have? Because now I've got, like, my 6-year-old, he's over here. We were doing at the end of the year, because I talk numbers, I talk finance, I talk all this stuff, and I'm going to brag on him a little bit. But my little 6-year-old, he just finished kindergarten, quote unquote, but we were doing mostly first grade stuff because we homeschool, so I could do whatever the heck I want. But we were doing like the end of the school year thing, and it was like, what is 47 plus 29 plus some other 2-digit number, right? And he sat there and he looked at it, he goes, 94. And he got the answer right completely. Like, he just because we're always talking numbers, we're always talking things. He hears me doing this. And I was like, this is so much fun to just watch. Like, I was always good at math, but never got to experience, some of the stuff that they do. So, so again, like, pass as much education that you didn't have onto your kids, not necessarily the material stuff.
Yeah. Well, it kind of goes back to the rich man, bad man, right? The tablets are way more valuable than the gold. Because the gold can go, but the wisdom can always, and I think it's also like, I remember when I was digging the holes for the construction company. I mean, this was in the summer. This was tough. I mean, and I know people have a lot tougher, but this was tough. And I remember, it was like, I think when I was making $120 a day. That's what I was able to make working. That was the value that digging holes was worth, right? And so I just remember it was like, we were talking about going and buying something. Like, that's like, I'd be like, that's like 7 days. Like, that's like, I was thinking about, like, just how much work it would take. And I think a lot of times the reason why I started working early, which it sounds like, you did as well. Like, I think I got my first job as soon as I could. Like, I was working at like the TCBY, the ice cream shop at like 14. Yeah. And, I think knowing what it takes to generate the money needed for the thing, the perspective sometimes isn't there for kids. Like, so you gotta know. So like when George does the law, he helps with yard work and stuff like that. And I'm like, George, like, you got to do it to a level that's worth paying for. Like, if you just do a little bit and you help, like, I'm not paying you for that. Like, this has got to be something that's well done, not just, I'm going to give you money because you're my kid. Yeah. I think we're fairly tough. I mean, we've always kind of, and this is an interesting kind of mastermind topic, is like, what's stuff you do because you're a member of the family, and then what's chores and stuff you do where you can earn income.
Yes.
And so that's it. Kind of.
We talk about that. Like, hey, emptying the dishwasher. That's because you eat this. You eat that stuff too, right? Yeah. Empty the daggum dishwasher. I'm not paying you to empty the dishwasher. Yeah. Right. But if I'm going to go trim the bushes, I'm going to do some stuff. You can either that's going to be a punishment because you did something terrible, or I'm actually going to pay you for doing it. Right. Yeah. It's going to cost something. But I mean, it's I think it's that's one of the reasons I don't like. Allowances either, right? It's to me, an allowance is like a like a government handout, right? Like you're not going to rely on the allowance. You're going to earn it. You need to earn any money that you receive from me. You know, sometimes you're going to get some on your birthday or whatever like that. That's whatever. But dagnabbit, you're going to earn your money, right? And now my sons are proud of themselves for like, okay, I have, you know, $1,000 or I have whatever it is that they're like, hey, I earned this. Like, this is fun. You know, the other day, I don't remember what it was, but he had, I think he'd found some money somewhere, like my oldest. It was like $10 or something he found somewhere. And I found it outside because he'd left it outside. And I was like, oh, well, it's my money now. He's like, okay, well, I mean, oh, well. And I was like, what the heck do you mean, oh, well? Like, you lost $10. Like, that's your money. And he's like, well, I mean, I just found it. So it's no big deal. I said, oh, here's a good lesson for you. Like, what's the difference between what you earned versus what was given to you, right? You didn't care about that $10 because you just found it on the ground. So, but you need to, you should. It's still yours. It's still money. It's still money lost. So we got to have a good conversation about the value of money, whether you earned it or not. Like, it's still yours.
And I think that the other thing I always want to kind of, you know, impart with the kids is that, you know, the money is a means to an end. And I think that it's critical because I think sometimes, you know, I know I caught him like, how much money? But it's like, okay, well, the number really is less relevant than what you think that number can bring to you, whether it's freedom, whatever. But the other thing that this is kind of like maybe way off the topic, but I also just a huge influence. You know, Carly and I met when I was 21. So like we met, you know, fairly young, and her father has also been like an amazing pillar of just consistency. You know, I think of the word patriarch, like he comes to mind. You know, he's always there. So I just, you know, I think I've been influenced in a really great way seeing, you know, what Ed Milet, like he's another. I always quote him as like he says the lessons are caught, not taught. And so I think I've caught a ton from him. So I just wanted to throw that in the mix. I
say the caught, not taught all the time to both the kids and on the podcast, because it is massively important because they're seeing what we're doing more than they're hearing what we're saying. We've all been kids and we've all ignored our parents an awful lot. Don't think your kids aren't doing the same thing. Right? So what are you doing that they see, that they physically see you do? And that, for me, one of the biggest things that slapped me in the face about is my exercise. I tell the kids how important it is to be healthy. And I've been failing miserably at staying as healthy as I should be. And it's like, man, they're seeing me, like they're hearing me say how important it is, but they're not seeing me, you know, do that. I'm calling myself out on it. Right. But all right. So let me fast forward again a little bit. So now you have, you know, you're I think we kind of paused in the trash truck, right? Like, how did you get yourself out of the trash truck? Where did you go next after that?
So I was really lucky. So like I said, I had a really good reputation here in town, and the Economic Development Authority, which is kind of like a quasi-governmental agency, they're there to help businesses, support businesses. A guy I knew, a good friend who was very supportive of us in our business, he was one of my calls. And he was like, Jason, we're launching this entrepreneurial Maryland Innovation Center. And I think you'd really be a good guy to help get it, you know, going, get us started. Like, I'm like, I'm interested in that. And so I started working with the Economic Development Authority kind of like almost as a governmental employee. Like I got into a W-2 place because I felt like it needed to provide some stability. It was, you know, it was stuff I liked to do. And he took a chance on me. You know, he was like, I don't really have a spot, but we're doing this, so maybe can, you know. And so that was for, you know, I still do some work with the Economic Development Authority. Like I love helping on redevelopment, shaping the town that we live in. But it was really like the first time I felt like, you know, could breathe, could kind of stabilize, and then really just had a chance to meet a bunch of different businesses, see what they're working on, where they're struggling, how it could be helpful, leveraging relationships I'd already had in the county. And so that was huge. And so that really helped kind of put like a bandage on the bleeding, or stop the bleeding. I still had the itch though. You know, I think after a while I still was like, all right, I'm like, I kind of felt like somebody said it was like a Ferrari in a garage. I was like, you know,
it needs to be driven. I need to go.
Yeah, no disrespect at all, because and I think that the public sector, any generalizations, you know, can be, you know, kind of, you know, off base. But I have seen some of the hardest workers I've ever met in the public sector. You know, and so it's just a different pace. I'll put it. Yeah, it's a different pace. But so I was doing that, and I still had some opportunities going on with the private equity guy that I was investing in businesses. So I was still kind of staying fresh on that. And then Gary Jonas had brought in an implementer to help him run an EOS. And this was 2020 maybe,
Okay.
And so they're like, we start running our mastermind group off of the tools. We're running level 10s. We're doing the rocks. We're running, all the core values stuff. And he was like, guys, like, and he's from Philly, so he's a straight shooter. He's like, guys, like, this is working. He's like, something's to this. So I met his implementer. Her name was Angela Calamus. She is like a huge reason why I joined. I took made the move. And she was like, Jason, like, you should do this. Like, you'd be good at it. I was already starting to use the tools in the companies we were investing in. Like, I was like, hey, get everybody aligned, and hey, this seems fuzzy. You guys are going like this, and so I was just doing it for free. And so I was like, I don't know. I was actually looking at a business to purchase. I wanted to buy a business. I wanted to kind of get back into that format, and it fell apart in due diligence. And I was like, let me look at this EOS thing, and I just kind of like, it just felt right. It hit me. I had a lot of people who I knew that were really interested in doing it, like as clients, and they're like, Jason, as soon as you do it, like, we're signed up. And I was like, yeah. Again, some of those limiting beliefs really started to resurface. Where I was like, oh man, maybe I should just kind of like hold tight. I don't know. And I think leaning on my mastermind group and the accountability of them really helped me kind of get out of my own way. So yeah, just kind of pulled the trigger. I was like, you know what, I'm going to figure it out. And so made the move. And honestly, it was one of those things where you're looking back, it's easy to say, wish I would have done it sooner. And, but it was a big decision. But it was, it was the best choice I ever made in my life.
I'd actually thought about becoming an EOS implementer just because I love helping people solve problems, fixing their business, doing all the stuff. I'm not your day-to-day operations guy, but I love being able to dig in and really help solve problems. So, and helping see people excel in their business. But I have not made that leap. Maybe you're going to convince me just listening to what you said again. But So at this point where you're at, kind of you're investing in other businesses, you're doing the EOS implementation. What is your kind of goal as you're continuing to grow forward? How are you trying to grow both the implementation side as well as your investment side? What is your intention moving forward?
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. So with EOS, we kind of have those long-term target, right? The 5 year, and so. I just literally before our call just ran a quarterly for our team, my internal team, the EOS team. And so, I think for me, core focus, right, is I want to implement with businesses I love spending time with. And I think that's really important distinction because I've noticed there's some where it's like, okay, we kind of want to do it. It's like, I only want to work with companies where we're all excited about getting after it.
Yeah.
On the investment side, I think it's a really interesting time because I've heard it called like the silver tsunami or the baby boomers. There's just a lot of people who are at that retirement age, but they don't really have a real succession plan for the business. So I think for me, I want to kind of keep doing what I'm doing on the EOS front because I love it. It's just great time. It's the best of all worlds. But I think what I want to really start doing is become methodical. Because now, we've probably with the group that we have probably invest in maybe one deal a year, maybe 2 deals a year, maybe no deals a year. I'd really like to kind of start becoming a little bit more methodical about making sure that we're on our toes in this window of opportunity as opposed to just, kind of reactive. I was talking with the team and, I really, one of our core measurables in our 3-year picture is how many lines of passive income do we have for the team members? I think, I look at it as like one thing for, us personally do well, but like how well is our team doing around us? Like how well are they doing by being in our in our trust, in our care. But yeah, I mean, I like the blue collar space, right? Like I think I love stuff where you got to do it, whether it's a good economy, bad economy, you got to work the HVAC, you got to work the plumbing, security, cleaning. I think what I've noticed now though, and I always saw people where they had this level of patience that I never had. And I think what I misconstrued was patience with desperation. And I would always be doing things out of desperation. Like I need to make this work, or I need to this, or whatever. And I think now that I've gotten to the point where, we've rebuilt, we're kind of back in a great place. Like I've learned that saying no to a bad deal is better than doing the bad deal.
For sure.
before I would force it. I would say, well, I got to do something, and it would not be productive.
Yeah.
So I want to be kind of patient and persistent at the same time.
Do you think, I'm curious, just kind of looking back, was that one of the mistakes maybe you made with the Renew It as well? Like you felt like you had to, or was it just a lack of tracking the data?
I think it was a combination of a lack of tracking the data, we were not properly capitalized for the business that we were in. We were kind of bootstrapping, and it all was good as long as nothing went wrong.
Yeah.
And then when something went wrong, we just didn't have the wherewithal to cover it. I also think we were in a very transactional it was two fatal flaws. One, it was transactional, so we couldn't go. We were one and done. Yeah. The other was it was based on these programs of the utilities. So they said how much we could do, how much we would get paid. So as soon as one policy changed, our whole entire livelihood was dependent on that. So it made me very sensitive to kind of regulations and policies that affect businesses that we're looking at. But yeah, so it was a combination of stuff. I think it was probably. Now I actually work with some businesses that are in the space that we were in. So, it's kind of like, if we could have covered that gap, coulda, woulda, shoulda, but it just, wasn't for us to run that race.
It's the way it goes. So if you were to look back at that now, knowing what you know, what step would you have done? Like if you were an implementer right now in Renew It back then, what steps would you have had yourself put in place? What things would you have done to make sure that company didn't go?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is the accountability chart, right? Like I think we would just kind of like throw bodies at things. We need to hire this, we need to hire that. And so I think if you probably looked at our ratios, we were overstaffed, at the administrative level and probably, just barely scraping by at the field level. Like we had people in the office and we had people in the field doing the work. And so I think we probably were overweight in terms of our overhead. So I would have just kind of had a better idea of like, hey, who do we need and why do we need them? I know we love them. I know, they're awesome human beings, but like, let's really right size the overhead of the business. I would have really focused on how do we use the relationships we have to build into more recurring revenue-based services? How do we kind of use this as a launching pad as opposed to just being the business that we're in? And really got after that plan way earlier. We started looking at that, but it was too late. We were already kind of like the engines were already blown. And then I would have said, look, save way more money. We were just not personally, but just as a company, we were spending everything we had. I mean, there was a year, one of the years we netted like $1 million. Like it was the most money I'd ever seen, heard of. I was like, we got more money than we could ever think of. And it's like, okay, well, after taxes, how much is that? After, all this stuff, it ended up whittling down. And then we just didn't plan cash well enough.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cash will get you. Cash will get you in a heartbeat in a business for sure. Because everything looks good on a spreadsheet, but in the bank accounts.
It's easy to lie to ourselves in a spreadsheet. I learned that.
For sure.
The pro forma should not be something that, is based on how you want it to be. But I'll tell you this, one thing I learned about banking was like, work with bankers when you don't need them. Because when you need them, they don't need you. It's kind of, and I love the bankers. I love, we have great bankers, but it was kind of like one of those ones where it's like, when you don't need financing is when you should get financing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Build the trust. Build the trust that's there. So it's not only is the regular bank account filled, but the trust account is filled as well. And they're like, okay, gotcha. We know who you are. You've been reliable. We can make this happen. Yeah. I think there's a story, and I could be misremembering how it goes, but I think there was something that Trump had done at one point too, because they were lending so much money to him when he was younger. And the banks were like, no, we want our money. And then he went back and built out the portfolio and said, no, you guys think that I need you. But if every one of you guys decide you want to call these loans, you guys are all sunk. You guys put in so much money, and it was like, oh yeah, you can. That's a rough spot for both of you guys to be in. But I don't think that has anything necessarily to do with what you said. But it was just interesting because I was thinking about the bank and how they do it. But the relationships were there, and they were like, all right, well, let's figure out how to get out of this thing together. So
that's a great point, because I think really there's like seeing the numbers and then there's knowing the numbers. And I was looking at them, but I didn't know them. And I think that was a big lesson learned for me. And the other was like, is like knowing leverage points. Like I remember like when we were going through it, like one of the big issues was our accounts payable, right? Like we were having trouble keeping that current because we were short. We were trying, and one of the things we did that actually gave us the ability to kind of like set, like at least close with dignity was work out plans with the accounts payable that were over a certain period of time.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, hey, you can't get in touch with us. This is where Josh did an amazing job of just like closing down in a way that was respectful, where, I always say, like, if I do business with somebody and I see them around the corner sometime in town, I want to be able to say high five, smile, and hug anybody I've ever done a deal with. Even if that means I don't get the best side of the deal, I like to sleep at night with a, smile on my face.
Yeah. And I think that's an honorable and respectful thing to do, and to teach your kids and show that, let them see that that's the case. Let them hear from other people that you were a trustworthy, good businessman, not necessarily just from Carly or just from you. Like they could see it and hear it from other people. Right.
Yeah. But it's driven by what's on your shirt. Right. I think a lot of those decisions, when you're abundance minded, you're okay. You don't need to make it all on one deal. Right. But if you think that's the only deal I'm ever going to get, then that scarcity starts driving that decision making. Gino Wickman, the founder of EOS, he has a really great, like, abundance minded versus scarcity minded. Like, like it was like almost like an audit of like, how many decisions am I making based on fear versus faith? So that was a big game changer for me.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right. So, so now as you're raising the kids, what's kind of your intention, or do you have any intention on bringing them into the business, like showing them actual business, giving them tactical? I mean, you already mentioned that your oldest wants to start a business. Like, what's your intention on kind of showing them that business side and bringing them into the business? Yeah.
It was funny. I don't know. Did you ever see the show Landman?
No.
So it was kind of like, anyways, Jerry Jones did this like cameo in it of the Cowboys, and he's like, all I ever wanted to do was have my family in the business so we could all be together. Like that was kind of like his whole thing. So he had like a really clear intention. I thought that was, to me, I don't know. I think for me, I just want to expose them to as much of it as possible and let them kind of find their groove, find their, their strengths, their interests. I think I'm a firm believer you got to try a lot of stuff you don't like to find out what you do like. But I think it will be good for all of them to go work in the real world without mom or dad around to get that experience. Kind of like Rich Man Babylon, right? He like sends them away. Yeah, he's like, you got to get out of here. And so I think we want to do that. Let them come back with, who they want to be. Would it be awesome to kind of have, the kids involved in the portfolio? And they're like, I do see like Frankie, and I know all parents say this, like he is so like mechanically inclined. Like he's the one putting, like he helped me with the Lego set. I was like, and he's 6. I was like, yeah, George, like Frankie, can you come here? So like I could see him, kind of like, being with cars and trucks, and so like I have a client that does heavy duty mechanical work, and I'm like, hey, can he get an unpaid internship? Can he go? So those are the type of things I want to do, is just give him the exposure and see what it feels like for him.
Yeah. And to me, that is including them in all of the business stuff, right? Showing them the opportunities that are there. It's not necessarily, I want you to work in my business, but I want you to work in something that you have a passion about. Like, so let me expose you to as much as possible. And again, just like when I was talking about the if you're not so great at math, then let's just get you to a minimal viable product for your math skills. But let's sharpen your, like, okay, well, the only way to find that out is to expose them to everything. So, I think you're in a phenomenal position as an implementer, that you have so many people that you can look at, and all these businesses you can look at and be able to talk to them about all of it and say, hey, look at this type of it. I mean, even my kids, when we drive by, my I think my 6-year-old at the time, probably 4 or 5, he was like, I want to drive a dump truck when I'm older. And I said, wouldn't it be awesome to own like 7 of those dump trucks? And then you could drive whichever one you want to, right? You could drive the one you want to while your other people are doing all these, and then just expose them to whatever, because there are so many cool different jobs that you can do that you may not have thought about. So let me expose you to all of them. And I think it's one of the benefits about, again, building your network out and showing everybody, like, listening to somebody like Cody Sanchez, where she talks about all of those, and that silver tsunami you're talking about, all these businesses that you didn't think about buying before. I can expose my kids to all of these different things, because I am now learning about a bunch of these that I would have never thought. There's a business I'm looking at right now, very tangentially. I'm not really digging into it, but it's like a crime scene cleanup business. what a great, like, you don't really think about it, but somebody needs to clean the crime scene afterwards, right? If it's not the family, then somebody needs to. So one, that's a great business, and crime is going to happen no matter what. So people still get killed and still have problems going on. And guess what? Crime scenes need to be cleaned up. So
I look at it like it's kind of like for me, like when I do the filters, or I'm talking to people like, what are we looking at? Like I look at it like mission critical businesses, stuff that has to happen.
Yep.
That's just a space. Like I don't like. I'm not a software. Like I don't know all that. I gotta. Like in Rich Man Babylon, is like the laws of gold. One of them is invest in things you understand.
Yeah.
And I've lost more money on deals where I didn't know what it was. I was like, I want to do it, and it's just like, the lessons just keep getting taught.
For sure. Yeah, I love that thought. Invest in things you understand, and I've made that same mistake multiple times before as well. But I struggled with that on even looking at stocks. Right?
Yeah,
I didn't necessarily understand some of the stuff, but I would just see a business and I was like, I want to do that. So I tried to convince myself, how about you only buy stocks, like either an index where it's got a bunch of stuff, or a company that like and trust. Like, I'm talking to you on an Apple computer, right?
Right.
And I've got an iPhone, and I've got all this. Okay, maybe I need to look at that type of thing because I know the company. Now I can dig into it a little bit. I understand the company and where they're going and what they do for people. So, and investing in things you understand is for sure something you should be looking at. So, as you're growing out now, kind of how are you? You said you invest in other companies, right? Are you so are you just like coming in as a money partner, a passive investor, quote unquote, on businesses, or are you trying to acquire businesses like whole cloth, or what's kind of your intention there?
Yeah, I mean, ideally we're able to buy the entire business or majority of the business. A lot of times either, we're buying it contingent on like a management team that can continue operations post sale, or we feel confident we can bring in an operator that can really kind of take it to the next level. I think our main thing is like, we want to buy the business, be able to kind of take what they've built, honor it, and build on it.
Yeah.
It's fun because, and the more I've learned with the EOS stuff, like for me, and I always say, like, I eat my own dog food, right? Like, it's really hard to facilitate and participate at the same time. So, like, we bring in an outside implementer for any of the stuff we do. Like, I want to be participating, not facilitating in those. But to me, it's exciting because, kind of talk about like star roles. And like, for me, I can tell, like, if it gives me energy versus takes my energy, I can tell like I'm doing something I really like. And when I'm talking to like a seller who they have skipped so many vacations. They have sacrificed so much of their entire life, the one life they have, to pour into the business. And for them to look me in the eyes or look us in the eyes and say, I feel like you're going to take great care of what we've done here, what we've built here. Like, that's the best part of it, is like, just building that and then delivering on it. Mm-hmm. But it's, I think I'm a people person, like my mom said when I was little. So, that, and then, and for us, it's really big on like, I want those team members to feel like this is like an opportunity to keep growing. And when the company wins, they win. I think, I know how hard it is to achieve that financial freedom, right? And, that's a ratio, not a number, as you were saying earlier. Like, you can make a lot, but spend a lot.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just, I think the why, right? I remember, like, it just feels like it's bigger than just business, right? It's helping people feel pride. It's helping people feel security. So I think that's why I'm so into it. And I love doing deals. Like, I love looking at business. I'm competitive. So I like seeing, kind of things start where they are and build them and grow them.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. I did have an NDA I sent to George, though. Actually, he was just sitting there and I had like a 4-page NDA. I was like, hey, George, you want to read this? He's such a good sport. He's like, yeah, I'll read it. I'm like, dude, if I was a kid, I'd be like, I don't want to read that. So he's looking. I'm like, hey, what I want you to do is I want you to tell me anything that makes you feel concerned. And I want you to circle any words you don't understand.
Yep.
So he had a bunch of words he didn't understand. And then one thing he said was so interesting. It's like a little thing, but like where the thing would be dealt with, right? It was like this in the state law that you're going to be operating under if there's an issue.
Yep.
He's like, Dad, this one says California. Like, that's pretty far away. So like, if something happened, would you have to go to California to deal with this? I'm like, that's a great question, dude. Like, I didn't even see that. So let's, you got some money on that one. So
yeah, and you don't want to deal with California. No, thank you.
I did one deal in California. I will never do it again. Sorry.
It's dreadful. So I want to shift gears a little bit to the parenting side of the house, like how, it sounds like you've got a super supportive spouse. What sort of, and you guys were together, I think you said 8 years before you got married. So what sort of, how did you guys meet? And then how did you guys decide that what sort of conversations do you have about marriage, about kids? How intentional were you guys about that sort of stuff? Or was it just kind of, let's see what life brings us?
Yeah, it was funny because Carly, when I met her, she was a teacher in Baltimore. She was a teacher for about 13 years. And first, she was beautiful. She was still super beautiful. But when she was telling me what she did and, kind of the kids that she took care of, and, I would come in and help in the class a lot of times. And she was doing kids' laundry. Like she was was just, I think that really helped me build a ton of respect and appreciation for her of kind of like I saw my mom helping all those people in need. I saw she was like the one constant in all these kids' lives. So it really just enchanted me to see her having this impact on all these kids. And so I always knew I was so lucky because she wanted to be around kids. She loved kids, and so I think, when we got together, we always knew we wanted to have a family. We had a really, what's interesting, and this is maybe a deeper kind of darker space to get into. So when everything was going on with Renew It, in parallel, we had a really really late stage pregnancy loss, and I look at it. You kind of I think that you would talk about faith and looking back. I think what it did was it put things in perspective for me. I think if to me, Renew It, losing the company, all that was heartburn. The loss of the pregnancy was heartache. Yeah. And I think that it helped me understand the business is the business, the money is the money, but that was just way deeper. And so going through that with her, I think that really rattled us. You hear it's common, and it was so funny, not funny. It was so odd because a lot of times, you have a baby and the next question, oh, when are you going to have another one? And, it's not coming from a place of anywhere besides just curiosity. And I became very sensitive to all that because it just rocked our world. And so we just were, just very intentional about the family is everything. That is the reason we're protecting, that's the house we're protecting. And so, when we had Lola, it was our anniversary. I remember the doctor, George's pregnancy was fine. Yeah, we're going to the doctor. We lost the baby. And then Lola, every meeting, every doctor's visit was just on pins and needles. On our anniversary at the doctor's visit, they were like, hey, we found some things. We see some stuff where pretty much you could be having a stillborn. Was we don't know. They did an amnio where they go, the needle goes through the stomach into the, on our anniversary. I just remember we're sitting there afterwards, what the fuck? Just totally blown. Fortunately, Lola was born super healthy and happy, but I don't know. I think just some of those experiences just it bonded us so closely that it's not us against the world, but this is primary, and I think I've ran the business. I've probably lost out on tons of opportunities, tons of stuff because I'm coaching soccer. I'm not missing the stuff, and again, that's a decision I've made. Those are consequences that we live with. But I think when I'm, on the deathbed, I'm going to be happy I went to the soccer practice versus the one more deal that, didn't matter.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that.
Yeah. So sorry, I took us for a turn there, but that was
no. That's that's part of the purpose of having these conversations. Is it? Yeah. If somebody else is hearing this, that puts a lot into perspective for folks to be able to really know, hey, it's a difficult place in life to be when you lose a kid, that you are looking forward to, and I can't imagine. But then to realize that you still have each other, you can still grow from it, you can still build from it, and to allow that to put things into perspective instead of tearing you down, you guys were able to go, you know what, let's make this more of an adhesive as opposed to something that pushes us apart. So I think that says a lot about the two of you on how you guys kind of stuck together through all of that. So good on you.
Thank you. Actually, it was a guy who was, I wouldn't say I'm spiritual, but I wouldn't say I kind of affiliate with a specific religion. But I'll tell you, a lot of times, man, guys from a Christian religion or Christian background have been there for me and really helped me. I remember I was just angry, right? Like I think it was probably a little bit of everything, but I was like, what are you talking about? God's good. Like, what's good about this? Obviously there's a lot of worse stuff happening in the world. And I remember Dan Grieve, I don't know, he's another GoBundance guy. Yeah. We're out of, he's out of Orlando. And I remember I was sitting there and he was like, Jay, he's like, the challenge is right now is you think you know better than God. And like, he's like, you think your plans are better than God's plans. He's like, well, what would have happened if that baby would have been born and passed, 3 weeks in or 3 years in? You don't know what is going, and it was just kind of like, whoa, I never had that perspective. I didn't think of it that way. Mm-hmm. And it didn't, solve anything, but it gave me a little bit of reprieve to reframe it, to not just keep turning bitter. It was weird because it's like so common. It happens a lot, but it's like that didn't make it any easier. It's like, that was tough. But
I've got another guy I had on the podcast, and his name is blanking me right now. But they lost their kid at like 3 months old. Was in the NICU from the day the child was born. And obviously that caused a lot of strife between husband and wife and trying to figure out what was going on and like, how do we grieve this? How do we communicate about it? What are we going to be doing? And, it's again, who knows, what God's plan is. All I know is that we're on a rock, like hurling through a universe that's massively beyond what either of us can think about. Yes, it's painful. Yes, these things hurt. I don't want to ever imagine going through what you or he went through. But at the same point, I have to go, like there are things in this world I don't understand. I've fought wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. I saw a lot of things I don't understand on why things happen the way they do. I've been all over this world doing all sorts of stuff. And I go, you know what? I can't hold on to those things. I can't think about those things in that matter. All I can control is what I can control. And I have to be able to move on from there. So
thank you for your service. I didn't know that. Thank you.
Oh yeah, no problem. My pleasure. Yeah, it was, sometimes my pleasure, sometimes not so much. Right.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
but it throws things again into perspective. Like I get to walk around the streets of Baghdad and see some horrendous things and the life that some of these kids were living and go, what a massive blessing. And then, to come here and then to hear some of the people say some of the things they say about our country. I'm like, you guys are so ignorant and oblivious to what the world actually is out there. It's if I hold on to all of that and look at it all as personal, it can really tear you down.
Sure.
But if you look at it and go, all right, well, I can put things into perspective and realize what a blessing it is that I have, and then, you get to look at your 3 kids and go, man, what an amazing blessing it is. I know that I could have 4 right now, but I've got 3 amazing kids. And then to be able to apply that learning to other people, like just sharing it on here, could easily help somebody else out in a situation where they're going through and going, you know what? I need to be able to look at this in a different perspective. So, so I thank you for sharing that, man. I know it's not easy.
Yeah, no.
So now, now with you and Carly, with the 3 kiddos, like how do you guys want to, like, what sort of intentionality do you guys have behind, this is how we want to raise our kids. This is what we want to provide. This is how we do you guys want to have more kids? Are you guys looking to have more? Are you guys done at 3? And then B, like, what sort of conversations do you guys have? Cause I just picture this could be just, there's a difference between business and personal. I get it, but I picture you guys sitting down and having a 3-year plan and a 5-year, your vision for your family and where you guys want to go. What is that vision for you and your family?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's funny. I put together a kind of a 5-year vision 10 years ago. So I put it together, and now it's like, but I've kept it. I've kind of tweaked it, and it's like, and now I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay, maybe it wasn't 5, maybe it was 10, but damn, like this is like, so I think what we do is, I have it right here, but it's like, the core values really do set the stage. So I think, in terms of like, the values we want our kids portraying, the values we want. I think the core values are there for when things are tough, not for when things go great, right? Like, everything's easy when things are cool, but when you feel slighted, or can you still be kind, right? When you feel like, so I think for that, but I think, we love, like, I think just by name, I'm more of like the vision plan, like, and Carly's like, that's cool. Like, she's not like so like into it like I am, but I think that the standards are consistent. The standards are, you guys are going to be respectful. You guys are going to be healthy. You guys are going to be active. You guys are going to treat each other like we're teammates, right? Like, and so I think that we're really just trying to like instill those good habits of, kind of how to be a good teammate. That's what I would say. Like, hey, we're all on the same team. We got to be great teammates. But I think what we really love to do is, so now we take about 4 fun family trips together a year. So once a quarter, we go to Deep Creek, we do little stuff, nothing crazy, but just enough to get out and kind of have the time together. So we love that. We've been finding our happy place is Chincoteague Island, Virginia. So now we have this vision. We always talk about the dream house. So the dream house, we're working towards that dream house. But yeah, I think, the great, we're not so, kind of to your point, like the kids are in public school. We're more focused on their character than their grades.
Yes.
Obviously we want the grades to be good because I think it does have a correlation to like, are you doing the stuff you're supposed to do? For the most part. But, I remember George had a test he didn't do great on. And I was like, George, like, did you try your best? He's like, yeah. I was like, did you study for it before? He's like, yeah. He's like, I got nervous. I rushed through it. I didn't check my work. And I was like, all right, dude, like, I'm not like, I'm not worried about it. Like, now if you would have said I didn't study and I kind of went in there and just rushed through it, like, then we got an issue, right? Because you're just not handling it the right way.
Because there's the character part, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so I think we're enjoying this season. I am an Uber. I am a lifeguard. I'm doing a lot of. We got all the stuff. I said we got one night that I think is gone now with next soccer season. We had Friday nights was the only nights with like no sports stuff. Yeah. But I have a good friend, again, another GoBundance guy, Matt Ayer, who's local here.
Love Matt Ayer.
You know Matt? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So his kids are elite athletes, right? Yeah. Like D1 scholarships, all of them. And I asked him, I said, what like, how'd you guys do that? And he was like, it was just an immense amount of time on task. But
wasn't his wife a D1 athlete too, though?
Yeah, his wife was a stud. Yeah, his wife was amazing. But it was like he's like, they were busy as hell, but it kept them out of trouble. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? There's something to that. I really like that.
I remember growing up, there was a kid on my wrestling team. He was always in trouble, but his dad had a bumper sticker that I'll never forget. It said, "Kids in sports, stay out of courts."
Oh, right? Yeah.
And I thought to myself, that's great. However, your son is always in trouble. So that, but I try to keep that in mind. The sports is a practice field for life, not just the sport you're doing. If you could figure out how to, even if it's an individual sport, my sons love golf, right? Individual sports, but still a practice field for life. Like if you didn't put in the effort to get your chipping down, you're probably going to have a bunch of bad chips. Like you got to put in the effort. If you don't put the effort in your life, in the things that you want, you're not going to excel. You're not going to get to where you want to go. So,
I think one of the other things I've noticed is like, and I think that, I heard a quote that said, "New levels bring new devils." And I think that sometimes the worst thing that can happen is at a certain level, you can get away without putting in the work because either your talent's there or your skill set's there. But, when you get to that other level where everybody's good, the only separator is really the work ethic. And so I think that a lot of times either, I've noticed like kids, because we coach in Georgia's soccer team for 5 years now, and been doing really well. The first season we lost every game, right? Then we got inch and inch and inch. Now we went undefeated after the third try. It was all good. All the kids were pumped up. But what I noticed was we're really big on the value. So like if any like say a kid like shanks a shot or misses a shot, like we had one kid's like, "Oh, come on!" He's like, "Dude, first of all, push-ups. Like if anybody breaks it, we're doing push-ups. Like so, it's like if you're marking somebody else." I said, "There's nobody more mad than him that he missed that shot. Like he needs you to build him up, not kick him when he's down." And so I think some of those lessons are like, hey, like you're not just playing soccer, you're leading right now. Yeah. And so I think that's what I love about sports it was where I learned the difference between, having character and just kind of winging it the ref makes a bad call, shouldn't let it be close enough for the ref to make an impact, right? Like versus, so
that goes right back to the extreme ownership as one of your core values, which you talked about, right?
100%. Especially when it's hard.
And I mean, I think that even is it get a flashback of the story about your business failure, right? That was a shanked shot, but you had all these people behind you and supporting you and saying, "Hey, we all miss shots once in a while. What can we do to learn? What sort of reps can we do to make sure that shot doesn't get shanked again? What sort of things can we do? What sort of practice can we do? What sort of whatever? I mean, it's the soccer field is teaching lessons and everything. So again, goes back to the sports. I think makes a huge difference in our kids' ability to work through issues and problems and teamwork and all the stuff. So even our youngest, he was playing soccer this season, and some kid just like pushed him from behind, and he gets up and he's like, hey, you just gotta get up, dude. Like, the ref didn't see it. Nothing else you can do.
You gotta get up, so I think sometimes, especially maybe with the youngest, it's a little tough because they kind of just, I don't know if this is somewhere to do, they're just kind of like the baby of the family, and they kind of, sometimes that's cute, but other times I think it could be a detriment because they need to be tough, as hard as it is to hear, and as many people don't agree with that, like the kids need to become tough at some point. And the more, what they call it, like a bulldozer parent, right? Like the more we remove obstacles in front of them, the more we remove their ability to become tough.
For sure.
I remember my dad, maybe this is a great kind of bookend to that. He said, I remember it was like, I just started the company. We weren't making any money. He's like, Jay, like, I'm never going to let you suffer, but I will let you struggle. Yeah. And I always appreciate that distinction.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. I think that's a good way to kind of wrap it up. Don't let our kids suffer, but definitely let them struggle. Same thing with our employees. Like they need to be able to struggle through things and work through it because that's how they're going to grow in their business. But they don't need to suffer. Let's help them solve problems before it gets to that point. But is there anything that you definitely wanted to hit on this conversation that you haven't had a chance, or that we've maybe blew past that you definitely wanted to cover?
No, I mean, the only thing that comes to mind is I remember growing up with, and maybe I felt like this at some stage, but like there's so many young men who don't have great father figures in their life. So I think that, I think that's why I enjoy coaching, right? There's a lot of different kids on the team. So I think the more we can reach out and be that, father figure to kids, it's everything. It's the difference between kids ending up in jail and kids ending up, employing people.
For sure.
I saw that with Carly. I saw that with where we grew up. So I don't know. I just want to kind of throw that out there. Like the more we can lean in, the better. Yeah. No, and that's one of the reasons I have this podcast, and one of the reasons I talk to dads is I think that it's unbelievably important in a world that seems to minimize a man's role, a dad's role, in the world. We need to now more than ever stand up and show what it means to be a good, solid leader. Not the, there's true toxic masculinity, and then there's what the world says is toxic masculinity, or what America says toxic masculinity is right now. Don't be a toxic man. Be a supportive, strong person that people can count on. That's like, be true to who you're supposed to be. Be a good representation of what that is in your own house and outside for others. So I love it. Love it, man.
Absolutely love it. Well, Jason, it was awesome getting to know you a bit, having good conversation. If folks are hearing you, maybe they're looking for an implementer, maybe they have a business they're looking at selling, or they've got that silver hair and they're part of that tsunami and they just want to get rid of something. What's the best way for folks to be able to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I think either, email or LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn's the main spot. I have not caught up on Instagram or any of those yet. So LinkedIn or email, just Jason Jannati at gmail.com or Jason Jannati on LinkedIn.
Very good. All right. Well, everybody listening, obviously, wealth of knowledge and experience that Jason has. So if you are looking for an implementer, if you're looking for someone to sell your business to, Jason would be a phenomenal person. If you don't want to sell it to me, of course. But everybody listening, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you spending some time with us. If you're still on, then obviously this was as impactful of a conversation for you as it was for me. So please subscribe, comment below what your favorite part of the conversation was. Jason, thank you again for jumping on. I'm looking forward to continuing our friendship beyond just this, and we will see everybody on the next show.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you so much for listening to the BizDad Podcast. We hope you found some value in your time here with us, and we look forward to bringing you the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's show, please subscribe and share so you and your friends won't miss our upcoming episodes. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Rumble, where we continue these discussions and share more valuable content. Be the dad you know you need to be and run your business in a way you're proud to share with your kids. Keep crushing it.